Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Anyway, on that note, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is Steve Baxi and Rasco for Rasco's Modern Life and the Steve Baxi YouTube channel. Hello, gentlemen.
So,
Just every time. There's no rhythm.
we don't have cues. I'm sorry.
There's no natural rhythm.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I kind of like it.
Look, Rasco's always high and I'm always drunk. What do you expect?
Yeah, bro.
God, this got dark quickly and not in the way it was meant to. We're on Geeky Gentlemen Horror Month. This is our last horror movie review for Geeky Gentlemen Horror Month. And Steve chose it. So Steve, what the fuck are we reviewing tonight?
Alright, so Ian, the fuck that we're reviewing tonight is the 2013 horror film that spawned an entire franchise, The Conjuring. Which, part of the reason I wanted to talk about The Conjuring is there's very particular, like, eras of horror films of how we do things, like the slashers were their own era and stuff like that. And I feel like the Paranormal Activity kind of found footage horror era. I feel like the current era of horror movies we are in is defined very heavily by stuff like The Conjuring and the fact that The Conjuring could get a franchise given the type of horror it is and that weird middle ground it has between like ghost movies and found footage movies. I think most people consider The Conjuring one of the best modern horror movies of all time, and I think it's really dumb. So that's mostly why I wanted to talk about it, because I don't understand this movie.
Okay.
I mean, it's definitely a scary horror movie. There are a lot of jump scares here that get you really riled up. Haley watched this with me, and she had to keep, like, you know, putting a pillow in front of her face and say, nope, fuck that noise. And yeah, I mean, I even had a couple moments like that where I'm like, Jesus, fuck. Like, when the maid, it's like, look what you made me do. I was like, oh God, it's Taylor Swift. No,
Look what you made me do.
No, but like there are a lot of moments like that where I'm like, oh Jesus fucking Christ! Like when the mom's in the basement by herself and she's at the top of the stairwell and she keeps lighting the matches and you hear the voice, "Do you want to play clap hot or hide and clap?" And then like the hands from behind her clap and the match goes out at the same time. Fuck, that's scary. But I don't know what substance there is to it. This movie just seems like more of like just a collection of like, Jesus fuck.
So I have just a question. Have you guys seen The Conjuring 2?
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Just very quickly,
I don't like
Steve.
it either.
Oh, okay.
Like, okay, so here's my thing with this movie and The Conjuring 2, honestly, is I can recognize that, okay, there's some good acting here. There's some good music here. There's like some good atmosphere and shit. A ton of jump scares because they're lazy, but whatever. It's a scary movie. What are they about? Like, what is the theme of The Conjuring?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there
really
is
good
one.
point.
Like,
Yeah.
what the hell is this movie? Like, every horror movie I've ever seen, good or bad, has something that it's about.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just briefly where I stand is that I saw this movie when it came out and I thought it was okay. I liked it. I really, really like Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga though. So like that elevates it for me. And, but I never understood that like this is one of the best horror movies made, period. Like I've never understood that. To me, it doesn't really come close. The second movie, however, I actually really like The Conjuring 2 because I think that it focuses a lot more on the characters. But for this film, I'm kind of like middle of the road on it.
Okay. Now, Steve, let me address your complaint about what is the theme here. And it's interesting that this is the last horror movie we're reviewing before we end history or horror month and go into history month, because this has the little moniker on it, based on a true story.
Yeah.
So would you accept on any level the argument that this movie does not have any themes because it is based on real events, and real events don't necessarily have thematic connections?
No. I
No,
don't
not
accept
at all.
that at all. Because, like, fuck, life is poetic. Things happen, and sometimes we give them meanings, but more than that, biopics have themes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Documentaries have themes.
No, I agree. It's just that, like, this is, if we were to take it as face value, and I don't even really want to talk about the, like, whether or not this is at any level true, just because.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the actual pictures of Annabelle. She ain't look a goddamn thing like the doll in this movie. She looks like fucking Raggedy Ann. Okay. Anyway, I don't really want to get into the whether or not this is true, but let's just take it at face value that this is a thing that happened to a family. Would there be any thematic connections? Like, would it be insulting to the family to imply that, like, they brought this terror onto themselves if they, in actuality, it's like they just were a group of people that moved into a house that they could afford and something really terrible had happened there.
I mean, but you could still make a theme out of, like, they didn't deserve this or something. Like, it's
True.
not hard.
I think
Could do this in a really tasteful. I just don't understand. Like, characters inhabit a space, and then things happen, but the things that happen don't seem to have literally any meaning. They don't even seem to have the meaning of they don't have a meaning.
Yeah, I think that where that comes from, why you feel that way, is that for me, when I watch this movie and we are introduced to, like, the family that's being haunted, it feels very much like almost like the opening scene of Jurassic Park 2, where, you know how you see, like, the people on the beach and the little girl wanders off and the little, like, dinosaurs probably eat her alive and her mother, like, screams, and then we cut to Jeff Goldblum.
No, she survives.
Okay, whatever. But when we cut away and we cut to Jeff Goldblum, and, like, so, like, that was just like oh yeah, here's some random people just to, like, ease you into the story. It feels like that's what the family being haunted is. Like, it feels like at any moment we could just cut away from them and never come back. And then those are actually, like, the characters of the movie almost as much as Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga's characters. I forget what their names are in the movie. But, like,
The Warren couple.
Okay. So, like, it feels almost like those are characters that aren't, like, supposed to be the focus of the movie as much as they are. Like, I feel like we spend so much time with the family but don't really learn anything about them as individuals at all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that we're introduced to them as they move into the house, that we have no idea what their relationship is like before that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of movies, like, open with, this is a new house, we'll learn to love each other here. Like I don't even think, like, we need historical context for them. Like, I don't even think they need to be characters. Like, I am firmly of the belief that you can tell a great movie with really bad characters, because then ultimately they don't, like, the personalities don't have to matter necessarily. I don't understand, like, these are people and they're getting haunted, and there's kind of an arc, maybe allegedly, with the woman that's psychic, but what's sort of the drive here? Like, in making this a movie, what did you say? What's the story?
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be structured differently. It needs to be more of, I think that the second movie does this exact same thing, just better.
Sure.
And I think that for this movie, if it wanted to just do it better, it could have done that. But another way it could have just restructured the movie is we're just with the couple as they meet the family,
Yeah.
and then we learn about what's been happening to the family through the couple, and that way you learn actually more about the family, because you're not just like seeing them do things, they're telling them about their experiences, and like you're going to inherently just learn things about what they choose to share and specific things like that, and you get time introducing each character, and there'd be like conversations that would just make that family feel more relevant to the movie, because that's like what bothers me about this movie is it's like structured wrong. If they wanted, they could have like literally done like almost no more character work with the family and just like structured the movie differently to where like we're not introduced to them as like this equally important side plot that will converge at some point, because it just doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, and I mean, even like there's so many like even lazy ways to do this, where like you could even like try and make it something about like, oh, they have a kid and the ghosts have like kids, and like parallel the ghost kid with the real kid, and like there's so many like classic horror cliches that this could have even bothered with. And I never really feel like, it doesn't even feel like the family's invading a space sometimes. It just feels like the ghost is fucking with them. And I'm sometimes all for a place that's just fucking with you. But, like, why did the family move away? Why do they want to try and survive in this house? What does it say?
I don't know. I feel like that's unfair. They very clearly address why they don't move away, and also
no,
why
I
they
mean,
can't.
I don't mean in like I mean more along the sense of like, thematically, as a family, what does it say for them that they want to stick together in this house?
Okay.
Like that. Like, I don't need, like, a practical answer. I just need sort of, like, what direction am I going with this? And you're right, Rascal. Like, you could restructure this. Part of the problem, I think, is that this is one of those rare films that everything's filmed in chronological order. And I feel like by doing that, all they really did is almost like they made a documentary, except they didn't, because it's a story. And somehow in between, because this movie's shot in kind of an interesting way, where the camera almost feels like it's a found footage thing sometimes, but it's clearly not. And it does sort of like that classic horror, almost perverted camera thing of like the camera's looking in from corners and stuff, almost like it's something in the house watching you.
Yeah, and then you get a lot of really... I will say one thing I really liked about this is some really, really interesting camera angles and movements. Yeah. Like, when the daughter goes from looking under her bed to getting on top, to going back onto the top of her bed and looking at the doorway, and the camera not only pans up, but rotates as it pans. That's a really cool shot. And they do a couple shots like that, where the camera is not only moving, but rotating the frame as it's moving. Yeah, and that's really disorienting, but in a really cool way.
Yeah, and I feel like there's lots of stuff that there could have been, particularly with the way they're moving the camera and stuff, and the directing is good in places. But like, it seems almost like the directing and the story and the true event thing are almost so at odds to each other that they're not like building anything in cohesion. Part of the movie I want to compare this to is the Amityville Horror, because that's a really similar thing. And the couple, the demonologist couple, had a say in those movies too, because those are also based in real events. And that one's entirely the opposite, where I feel like it's not directed very well, but there's characters and there's substance and there's a theme. There's an idea about like what it means to be in a house and to inherit the history of a house. It's like there's a story there, and I don't understand how this just missed all of that.
Uh-huh. That's a really good point. So, we definitely know what you don't like about it. What is something that you thought was done really well?
Well, I think that James Wan is a good director. I think that he's probably better than the movies that he gets to make. Like, I think that he should be given better scripts to work with. I don't think that he writes any of the movies that he's directed.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, so I think that like he kind of gets stuck with these projects that I think studios are just like, we just need to put this movie out. Like it's going to make this amount of money regardless of quality, just here. And I think that he does really try. And I think that The Conjuring 2 is an example of a movie that's like clearly elevated by someone actually giving a fuck. And this movie, I still get the sense that he's really trying, but I feel that it's just kind of wrong from like a very, like from the origin of the idea of this movie. There's something wrong with it choosing to be a little bit more like Alien, where we talked about Alien so long ago. It was like the first Geeky Gentleman I was on, but we talked about how it was like observatory horror, where it's kind of like you're just watching people, like you're like watching ants in like an ant farm just like squirm under pressure. Whereas like this doesn't work that same way because it's not the same kind of story. It's a very different story. There's a lot more time. There's a lot more characters, and it's not structured like no one's really the main character until someone is. It's very much like, well, there's this couple, and they're kind of like the main characters, and there's also this family, and they're kind of like the main characters. And I know I'm getting really negative again, but outside of that, a lot of the scenes of horror I think are kind of cool. Like I really do like the scene of the girl staring into the dark corner and just being like, "There's somebody there." I just think that scene's really well handled, and I like how long it is. And I think
there's this episode of Doctor Who called Listen. And it's about, like, just this... It's just about fear in the most interesting way. It's about the fear of being alone. And there's the scene where they're in an orphanage, and they're talking to a kid under his bed. And Doctor Who's, like, every single episode of Doctor Who has some kind of alien, creepy monster thing. And they're talking with this kid under his bed about, you know, has there been a monster under your bed? And the kid goes, "Yes, I'm afraid there has been." And they're like the shot is literally of them on the floor under the bed, and then suddenly there's weight on the bed, and everyone like kind of just like that oh shit look to each other, and they get out from underneath the bed, and there's just something sitting on the bed under a blanket, and it's like moving and just like kind of, you know, it looks snake-like or something. It's just moving underneath this cover and clearly looking at the doctor and stuff as he talks to it. And it is one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen until I saw this girl standing on her bed screaming at the corner. That was horrifying because I couldn't see a damn thing. I don't know if there was anything there as far as like physically shot on set, but God, the way that actress sells it, the way the thing is framed, that is a really, really well done scene for horror.
Yeah, I mean, jump scares are a tool just like anything else. I don't think jump scares are inherently a bad thing. I think it's just a matter of how you use them. Mm-hmm. This one has a ton of jump scares, and that's problematic on some level, but I feel like when they work here, they really, really work. Particularly with like the way they're shot, because jump scares usually are a matter of cutting, and in this, I feel like it's more a matter of like a scene not being cut, but interrupting itself as it's happening, and that makes it more scary. Because I mentioned earlier, like I don't think the movie like directorially really has like a vision of how it's supposed to be structured, because sometimes it looks like it's shot almost like it's a found footage movie. But there are places in particular where like the ghost shows up and stuff, where the camera's just like sitting there almost at an awkward angle, like it's just on a tripod. We just kind of wait for a minute, and then something happens, and it's horrifying. Like particularly in the scenes where the kid's like banging her head against the door, and then for a quick instant you look up and there's like a demon witch lady on top of the cabinet. Mm-hmm. And like the scene never cuts, the camera angle doesn't change, something in the scene just alters, and it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really, really like the way a lot of I think everything with the ghost is well handled, as far as just like visually scaring the fuck out of you.
Yeah, no, it's a scary movie. I will give it that.
Yeah, it's just interesting the way that you watch this and you're like, man, I know some shit's about to go down, but it still goes down. And I don't think that any of the jump scares are poorly used, because kind of the point here is that the ghost is purposefully fucking with them and tormenting them. And that just really helps elevate this in a way. it just helps it helps it feel more genuine, because we're so used to movies that have jump scares that are like just there for the audience's benefit and have no effect on the characters. Like this is a weird one to go to, but the first Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie, when like Blackheart is like
oh my
walking
god,
yeah, he's like walking through the desert toward the camera, and then just like randomly his like scary face just pops up as a close-up on film. It's like and it's like that is so just there to get for a cheap reaction from the audience. Nothing is added to any of the characters in the movie for that. And if you think about it, it actually makes things make less sense, because what, he's just like walking through the desert and then just randomly decides to go because that's weird.
I know, that pissed me off so much when I saw that movie as a kid, because I was like so afraid of that. I was like, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, well, like it's just cheap. It's just for the audience. Whereas this, like, every jump scare here is for the characters. Like, every time someone is scared by every time you're scared by something in this movie, someone else is scared by it too, which helps.
Well, and I agree with that, except I'd fight back a little bit in that, like, kind of like what we talked about last week with 1408, there's just a problem of, like, I kind of get the history of the haunting, but it's also kind of contrived and motivationless, where, like, the ghosts are targeting the kids, which makes some sense. But then every now and then, it just sort of seems to, like, fuck with that setup. And, like, the way it opens with Annabelle almost has nothing to fucking do with what this movie's about. At all. And, like, it just seems really bizarre and random that Annabelle's the thing behind this.
What do you mean Annabelle's the thing behind this?
Well, because, like, the movie opens with, like, oh, there's, like, this possessed doll. Like, oh, no, it's not that the doll is possessed. Like, there's like, it's like there's something else around it, and that, like, the doll's manifesting, like, an emotion or something. Like, and then the movie ends with Annabelle and the glass case. I don't think Annabelle has anything to do with this. Like,
I would
like,
say
the
Annabelle
physical
is the
doll
Slimer.
is not the scary part of this movie, but that's somehow the opening and closing imagery.
No, I would say Annabelle is the Slimer of the Conjuring franchise.
Yeah.
As weird as that might sound, like, she has a very iconic imagery, and she is connected to what these people are doing, but she is just a window for us to see, and she has a marketing appeal.
Well, and that's the thing about it, is, like, I just feel like the way this ghost is operating, and what it's doing to these people, and how it's supposed to relate to the history of the house and Annabelle is all just so wonky.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they make an Annabelle movie?
They did, but at this point in time, like, it just wouldn't, like, watching this without watching those, I don't understand what's happening.
I agree. Two Annabelle movies.
Oh, really? There's 2 Annabelle movies and 2 Conjuring movies, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. And don't they go in, like, reverse order?
I don't know.
I thought, like, the Annabelle movies take place before the Conjuring movies.
Oh yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm sure, like, long run wise, there is a mythology to this, but as I'm watching it, like, I don't get it. Like, I'm okay with ghosts being motivationless in cases, but, like, when it's this hyper specific situation, I just don't understand why it's doing this.
I think the idea behind, like, this weird choice to have Annabelle kind of, like, seeded throughout the movie is that I think they were, and this is going to be really ridiculous, but I think because of the nature of this being kind of period, it has, I think they literally kind of approached it like Star Wars, but instead of Star Wars, think of something else that's episodic, like Scooby-Doo, where every episode of Scooby-Doo, they go and they, like, find a new mystery to bust, and it's like, whatever. Well, it's kind of like, I think that's what they kind of have in mind for The Conjuring, where it's like this Scooby-Doo serialized kind of thing where it's like, last time on Conjuring Annabelle, this time on Conjuring this family. And, like, it just feels like maybe they're kind of trying to, like, make it feel a little bit more serialized.
I mean, I
apparently
suppose
this couple did a bunch of these kind of, like, missions and stuff, and I guess they're trying to spin this off into a franchise, which, I mean, to be fair, for a horror franchise, that is a better premise than a lot of things, to go on these excursions that these characters apparently that these people apparently went through.
Sure.
Now, here's a question that gets like really weird, since this is on some level based on something that happened to people, and I'll open. I don't believe in ghosts, nor God for that matter. So like, what's up with like other religions in the universe of this movie? Like,
seriously, seriously, this is my biggest issue with so much horror. Of like, it seems like it only exists to scare you to believe into a specific religion.
Yeah, I'm just like, so like, because there's this theory, it's not a theory, it's dogma. There's this dogma in Catholicism and other branches of Christianity that other religions are the devil tricking you into turning away from God. And, you know, that's certainly a good sales tactic. But I just don't get, like, so does this movie, like, affirm that? Or could they deal with a ghost that is not at all connected to demons or Christianity?
Well,
like,
and
what is their approach if they have a ghost that, you know, putting crosses up doesn't piss it off?
You could explain it to be like, any religion could have developed the tactics to combat the paranormal, but it was only Catholicism, and it just so happened that only Catholicism dealt with it properly. Like, you could make up something to explain that away, but it's funny when movies do, because I agree with you that it is kind of funny that, like, when you decide that you can, like, combat ghosts with, like, a specific faith within the universe, you kind of, like, say that this is the true faith.
Yeah, that makes this faith right.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is when movies forget that they're doing that. Like this movie called what is it called? It had Aaron Eckhart in it. It was called
I, Frankenstein?
No, it was shit. It was a horror movie. It came out in like January. It was terrible. Incarnate, that's what it was. That movie forgets that, like, it forgets that it's doing that, and then like there's something later that happens in the movie where it's like, wait, that shouldn't have happened because you just kind of established that Christianity is like the one true faith, and like it's really funny. It doesn't really bother me within the context of the story if the story like understands that that's what it's saying and it needs to follow that rule. But like I understand that it kind of comes across a little weird to people like that aren't religious, or if they aren't Christian or Catholic or whatever. It's just funny as shit.
Well, yeah, particularly in the sense that like it becomes the trope of a whole genre where like I know people that aren't Christian, that don't grow up in a culture that is dominated by Christianity. So like when I explain to them like, so to kill a vampire you could also ward it away with a cross, and like, what's a cross do? I'm like, well, because it's a sign of God. And they're like, how? What does that mean? Like, are there just like, is 60% of the planet just doomed because they don't know how to fight vampires?
Yeah, like what the fuck does Richard Dawkins do to ward off a vampire?
Yeah,
right?
Honestly. Like I just, and again, I don't want to like just attack this movie for doing a thing that it's founding on like the whole history of this genre. But I mean, feel like because it's based on a true story, and because they have people that like quote unquote witness these events and stuff, I just feel like there's supposed to be like this more religious overtone that isn't there, that just again really confuses me about, in relation to the ghost, what the hell's going on? Like, what is this about? I just don't understand.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
That and like the one ghost fighting the wife, it's just like, okay, yeah, she's randomly a clairvoyant, and I'm like, okay, maybe set that up a little bit better. It just kind of happens, right?
And she's like, there's nothing that she does in this movie that can't just be explained by like, at this moment in time the ghost is choosing to scare you, as opposed to anyone else.
Yeah, it's weird. She definitely has the most insight, like when she sees the mother saying that, like, look what she made me do. God, that's always going to be the Taylor Swift scene. Anyway, like, you know, it's interesting because that's a trope in horror movies that I quite like, when not all the ghosts are evil, but they only have certain ways to get a hold of you, and those ways are just naturally terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember the scene in The Sixth Sense that I had to leave the room for, because I only seen that movie one time when I was very young. It was when the kid is told by Bruce Willis, well, why don't you ever talk to any of the dead people? And then the next time he sees a dead person, it's this girl that just appears and she starts, like, vomiting, like, white blood all over in front of him. And, like, he runs away at first, but then he comes back to check on her, and I could never deal with that. Like, something about... I have a very particular thing when it comes to, like, medical stuff sometimes. Like, if you talk about surgery, I get kind of queasy. And just something about, like, the way she... Like, in my head, she was vomiting white blood cells, and I had to leave the room. I was, like, maybe 7 or 8, and I never got back to that movie. But, like, I liked the idea. I understood, in retrospect, the idea that it was, you know, these ghosts trying to reach out to the kid. And I like that here, that you have... You know, what's his name? The boy ghost in this movie. Rhodey or something like that. Rory?
Something like that,
Rory.
I don't remember.
Pikachu.
Yeah, Pikachu, that was it. No, you have Rory who tries to reach out to the girl, and, like, he's not helping the witch here at all. He is, like, actively, like, that's my favorite hiding spot. You know, he's giving them, like, chances to get away. He gives them a tool that allows them to see what's going on in the house and stuff like that. And I like that the ghosts are reaching out and trying to save these people from going through their own fate. And I like the way that the film portrays that.
I mean, I feel like that's a thing that could have been brought more to the forefront, because the jump scares and the way this movie's just structured makes it seem, despite sometimes there being a reason for why the ghosts are doing this to this person, in general, the motivations are just so random that, like, even if, like, if this seems like the ghost is trying to save them, it still comes across as, I'm just fucking with you. Like, so much of this movie is designed to fuck with the audience that I have a really hard time figuring out when the movie's being sincere about anything.
Then it doesn't help that the witch, the mother, and the living mother all tend to look a lot alike. Like,
They do.
That and the wife of the demonologist, or whatever he calls himself. Like, they all start to look a lot alike, particularly with the running makeup thing, the running mascara. I really start to have trouble telling who's supposed to be who. Like, especially when the living mother is going through the exorcism process and she's, like, becoming the witch at certain points. And I'm just like, wait, is she becoming the witch or is she becoming the other mother that killed her child? I cannot actually tell right now.
Yeah.
It is a character design flaw as far as visual design of your characters.
So, okay. I'm a little confused, more than a little confused. I'm just, like, I don't entirely know. So, like, there's the physical witch who was a witch and killed herself, and she's haunting the house because... And then there's, like, the person that killed their child, and is that different from the witch?
Mm-hmm. It's one of the people that lived in the house that killed her child.
And why?
Because the witch made her do it.
And why?
Because they lived in her house.
But, like, why is the witch a witch? Like,
Because she was just a witch in that time period. That's the only explanation you get for that one. And also, wait, hold on. This is important. They say that the house was built in the 1800s, and then they connect this to Salem.
Yeah, fuck that.
Salem was in the 1600s, folks. She would have to, at best, be the great-great-granddaughter of a witch and become a witch herself. They clearly give dates. If you're going to give dates, you should check your history.
See,
because Salem was in the 1600s. I don't know if they get I don't remember if they give a specific location for where this house was located, but Salem and the whole witch thing was in the 1600s, and there were certainly witch burnings throughout history, but that is the most notable one in the U.S.
And this is where, like, it confuses me when you talk about, like, at times when the ghosts don't want them to, like, go through their same fate, because there was a witch who just literally is like, you know what? The devil rules. And then killed herself. And now is fucking with everyone because of the way she worships the devil. And I just don't understand how that has anything to do with look what you made me do and, like, fucking with this family. And, like, I don't know. I can, in a lot of horror movies, I can buy that, like, this person just hates everyone that's inhabiting this space, whatever. But then you when you just, like, blandly, two-dimensionally say, no, this person's just evil and on the wrong side of God, and they know they're on the wrong side of God, and that's why they're on the wrong side of God. Like, this movie is so self-serious and overly scary and creepy and fucked up, and at the same time just so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to feel about it in those senses. Or, like, you can't, like, give me these terrifying jump scares and act like you're this horrifying PTSD kind of ordeal, and then just be like, yeah, witch. It just seems like a weird tonal shift.
Rasco, you got any thoughts on that?
Not really.
No, you just agree? Okay. I don't know. I'm of multiple minds of it, because, again, this just seems like a general rule that happens with ghosts on cinema is they can only reach out to you by scaring the fuck out of you. No matter like what their intentions are, the only way to get in contact with people is to scare the fuck out of them. That seems to be cinematic ghost law. And so I don't know, something about the way that the scenes with, like, the ghost trying to, look what she made me do, the boy ghost, that stuff I found kind of interesting. Because, like, while the mother ghost is scary, she's not scaring the clairvoyant woman. She's trying to show her what she's been through. And trying to like, help her not serve the same fate. As opposed to why they are ghosts too in this house, I think it has something to do with the witch curses anyone that lives on her land.
Which is, again, why they're ghosts is fine. I'm just more along these weird, confused lines of, like, so this is based on true events, and the couple that witnessed this are like, so you see, in the 1800s, there was this woman, and she was just evil. And she knew she was evil and decided to do evil things, and then these people were affected by the evil of this pure evil person, Like, it's just so bizarrely simplistic. Of, like, I think, and Brett Morrison says this in his Batman run, where, like, I go into this wanting to believe it's real. Like, I don't care what my own beliefs are in this moment when I'm watching, like, a horror movie. I want this to be true because I want to be scared and I want to enjoy it on those terms. But, like, when you get to something that simplistic, in my head I just go like, you're just trying to provoke a reaction now. Like, I don't believe you. You're just saying this person was a witch and worshipped Satan. It's got to be more complicated than that. You're just making this up. I'm not doubting these events happened. I'm just saying maybe that woman had reasons. Maybe she was
had
a woman
reason.
and not a witch. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Man, we should have reviewed Paranorman instead of this.
Honestly,
Damn.
though.
Damn. We fucked up again.
And
That's the big problem with doing Horror Month once every year is, like, man, there are a lot better horror movies we could have talked about, but this was just what we were in the mood for this time around.
And again, this is just, like, one of those, like, everyone's like, The Conjuring is one of the best horror movies of this decade, like, it's defining the tone of the horror movies we make now. I don't disagree with the term that, like, this is the style that we're using for horror movies lately, because I think it absolutely is. I don't think it invented this style. I feel like it's more along the lines of, like, it took what movies from, like, 2005 onward were doing and just did it all at once. So like this is that in between ground of like say the Saw movies and the Paranormal Activity movies, and like
Yeah,
even
with
stuff
her
like
getting her leg pulled and shit.
1408 and stuff like that, where like it's just bringing it all together and it's its own voice, and now this voice is what we do. But this as a movie, I don't even think it's important. I think it's just weird and nonsensical, and somehow people latched onto it.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I don't know, Rasco, you've been pretty quiet. Why don't you take us somewhere on this one?
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Music. Does this movie have any music?
I don't even remember, dude. I
Can't even
usually
remember.
movies, even if it's bad, I don't even know. I was so shocked by what is this movie about that I completely forgot.
I didn't catch any. No music stood out to me. I don't know. The one scene that's memorable for its audio to me is the birds. And I'm not sure if there's like a music swell there or if it's just really good sound design with a bunch of cacaws.
Well, I mean, I think the sound design's pretty good all throughout. Like when she falls through the cracks into the basement, I thought that was a really good, well constructed edit.
The way they shot that made that look real, like that house look a lot bigger than I think it is.
Seriously, what is the architecture of that place?
Yeah. Like, you could not fall all the way down like that. That's not possible. Because,
No.
like, if there was... Alright, if there was a, like, area in the house where you could get inside the wall like that, fine. But you wouldn't be able to fall that far down because no wall would extend that far unless it was a foundation wall. And if it was a foundation or load-bearing wall, then you wouldn't be able to get in fucking side of it because it would be solid.
You don't know. There wasn't any building regulations back when that house was built. You don't know.
Fair enough.
I mean, also, at some point, you would have gotten stuck, right? Like, there's no way that there's enough of a gap for you to fall all the way down.
Well, the ghost rearranged the architecture of the house before the fall happened.
Fair enough.
This is one of those things.
Also, what's up with the noose in that room? Like, why is that there? Is that supposed to be the noose the witch hung herself with? Didn't that happen
I thought that was in
like
the tree.
hundreds of years ago?
I thought the witch hung herself on the tree outside.
Yeah, she did, but I'm just saying, where's the noose from and or for? Like, is it supposed to be the noose? The noose just, like, thrown inside the house? Who keeps a noose?
Don't you just have a handy noose?
Just your average Joe here, just keep my noose around in case,
Keep it in my back pocket. Don't leave home without it. Never know when you need to just strangle someone with a noose.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that.
And this
wait. This is connected to the noose thing because I think this is an important question because this is a real room that exists. I've seen pictures of it. The Warrens have to be the worst parents ever because, like, all right, fine, you believe in exorcisms and demons and stuff like that, and you believe that they can channel themselves within objects. And you believe that the responsible thing to do is to keep the objects in a safe place where no one can accidentally get a hold of them. On what level of any ethical standard is it okay to keep that stuff around your child in your home?
Seriously. Or to wear something your child gave you while you're investigating.
Yeah. That is such a weird thing to me. I'm just like, they make that room so damn terrifying. And in all honesty, it does set itself up great for a feature or a franchise film. It's just like, why can't it be a storage shed? Why can't it be a room inside a church? why does it have to be your house? You apparently have some level of contact with the Vatican. Why isn't the Vatican keeping the cursed items?
That's a really good point.
Why isn't it like with the Lost Ark and all those artifacts from the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
There we go.
Honestly, though.
Okay,
There-
completely tangential, not connected to anything at all. The one good thing about the fourth Indiana Jones movie is when they're in Area 51 and they run over the box that has the Ark of the Covenant in it. I love that scene so much. Anyway.
But like, I feel like there's watching movies with groups is always fun to varying degrees depending on what movie you're watching and the group you're in. So like my friends and I watching horror movies together is fun depending on what we're watching, and we talked about this a little bit last week. So The Conjuring, Friday the 13th this year, my friends and I got together and just did a horror movie marathon, and we decided to start with the scariest thing we could think of and end with the least. So we started with The Conjuring and ended with Addams Family. And in between was Carrie and stuff like that. So The Conjuring was a thing where like one of our friends was really, really scared by it. The other one was laughing at it. And then me, the whole time, I was like, this is not one of those movies where like I saw it, experienced it, and then I talked about it and realized that like it wasn't good. This is the thing where like as we were watching it, every 10 or so minutes we would be like, I don't get it. What's happening? What is this about? Like, and my two other friends aren't even movie people. And like 30 minutes, or not even 30, but like halfway through this movie, they're like, what is this movie about?
Yeah,
I
it
just
doesn't.
don't think it's a good experience.
It doesn't build. Like this movie doesn't ever feel like it's building on itself.
Yeah,
It,
absolutely.
it kind of feels like BVS in that sense. Where BVS, you're watching the movie, and about an hour of the way in, you go, I still don't see like the stream that's like pulling all of these events together and like showing us like there's a progression here. It feels like just really kind of there's a lot that's happened, but we're not putting the blocks together to create something out of it. We're just like introducing a lot of blocks, and they're just kind of all scattered across the floor.
Yeah. It's so concerned with building the atmosphere for arguably scary scenes that like nothing else is happening, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree. It does feel like that thing where just like I talked about this with you, Steve, where like the new It movie, like it's an okay movie, but just feels like for a long time we're just okay. Here's a bunch of scary shit that nothing happens during. It's just a bunch of scary shit, and I feel like that is definitely what's going on in this movie. It's like nothing's really happening. There's just a lot of scary shit going on.
Well, and even because we disagree on it slightly, but like even taking what you said, even though lots of scary shit happens in it, at least the scary shit is related to the person being scared.
Mm-hmm.
Like in this movie, it's just creepy shit. Like I don't understand how any of these scares have anything to do with the people being scared. It's
Like,
just weird.
Except for like the clapping game.
Yeah, that should not be for the mother. That should be for one of the sisters.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I will say I think this movie's really well shot. Like that first time that the hands come out of the wardrobe and clap, and you're like, is it the daughter or is it the ghost? Is it the daughter or is it the ghost? And she goes and she starts reaching into the cupboard and past the clothes, and she just doesn't, like, she can't really feel anything. And then the daughter comes around the corner after she takes off the blindfold. That is a really, really well done scene to just unnerve the fuck out of you, and it's not a jump scare.
I agree.
Yeah, it's cool because the hands are like really, they look like they couldn't belong to anyone. That's
Yeah,
what's
they're
weird
really
about
out
the
of
hands.
focus. Yeah, and they're also very out of focus too, right?
Yeah.
Like it makes it just so vague and just at the edge of your perception that it makes it really, really creepy. And this movie does have a lot of good creep factor and scare factor, and we talked about the jump scares, but like the creep factor of it too is really, really strong. Like when the one lady is hanging the laundry, and then the wind comes in, and the sheet just like gets let go of, and then it forms around the shape of a body and then just goes away. That's not a jump scare moment. That is just a creepy fucking idea.
I'm with you. Like, it knows how to creep you out. It knows how to build atmosphere. I just wish it knew other things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like I hate this movie or something, and I don't. I just, like, I don't know. Like, I don't care about it. I have a hard time calling this, like, a movie, just because I feel like there isn't much of a story. And, like, so the scares are good. Part of what makes horror movies scarier for me is, like, the idea of why you're being scared. So even if, like, you can't ground it in, like, a physical superstition, there's that kind of thing that you can never escape. This is why I think the Babadook's so good, where, like, the idea is the more you don't believe, the realer it is. And so no matter what, you can't escape that. And in any context, that's going to creep you out. And so in this one, the moment you stop watching the movie, it's not haunting you anymore. You know? Like, it's not like It Follows. It's not like 1408. It's not like this universal scary idea. Even in, like, possession stories where, like, it's contextualized to a person being possessed, the possessing is so universal and could happen to anyone that it could still creep you out. You could still feel like you're going to open your door, it's the middle of your night, and something will jump out of you in your living room. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like that with this movie. We're like, it's such a weirdly specific haunting that it stops being scary the moment you stop watching it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I needed something to cool down from just the on-edge feeling that all the jump scares put me in here. So I watched a episode of a cartoon show after I finished the movie, but, like, once I got that, I was like, okay, now all the emotion's gone, now I don't feel anything from it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
It really is. Like, it's... Even, like, the scenes you're describing where, like, these are specifically scary scenes... They're cool descriptions. They're scary in that scene. I'm not afraid of hands coming out of my closet in that way. Like, I don't know. It's
now, like, so wait, hold on.
Contextualized, huh?
Now, look over at your closet, Steve, and give me a 10 count on how freaked out you are if a pair of hands came out of there right the fuck now and clapped.
Oh no! If it comes out right now, like, I will cry. Like, this is over. But you know what? Actually, that's not honestly true. Because I watched Halloween one night, and then I parked my car as I got home from work at like 10 o'clock at night, and it was terrifying. And I got really edgy because, like, I wanted to run back to my apartment because I was kind of creeped out. Yeah. And then, like, halfway through my walk, I realized, you know what? Worst thing that could happen right now is, like, monster is going to kill me. And I'm all right with that. And then I wasn't scared anymore. Like, if my apartment is haunted right now and a ghost wants to kill me, like, you go for it, bro. You know what you want.
You burned it.
Yeah, you know, you deserve this. It's okay. I'm alright with this.
Yeah, that's the movie I want to make, where, like, the ghost tries to fuck with someone, but they just don't care. Yeah. They're just, like, so fucking passive to it. They're like, oh yeah, I actually got a really good deal on this place. Why? And it's like someone just, like, pops out of their series, like, rah, 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 and, like, the person they're talking to is like, oh my god, and they're like, that's why. No one else wants to live here because of the ghost, but doesn't bother me.
If a ghost just gets off on scaring you, like, what do you do in that situation? How do you fuck with that?
Right? Yeah, you're just like, yeah, I don't get scared. I've got, like, this weird thing in my brain where, like, I'm unable to be frightened. And so I got a really, really good deal on this fucking mansion that I'm living in because there's a ghost here. Drawback is I can't bring girls home. Okay. One last stupid joke. Saw a great tweet and was like, why is ghosts always from, like, the 1800s or something? Why isn't there, like, a ghost haunting someplace that's from, like, 2007? Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to, like, wake up at 3 a.m. to, it's Brittany, bitch!
Honestly, though, like, Times are scary right now. I want the ghost of 2016.
Right?
Like, that is the scariest fucking demon there possibly could be.
Definitely. Oh, I guess that's what Unfriended was the ghost of 2015.
Yeah, except in 20. Yeah, that works for me.
Cyber ghost.
I do like me some cyber horror.
What else can we talk about this? We need about 10 to 15 more minutes. Rasco, you got anything else we can talk about? You got any thoughts on this movie that you have yet to express?
Well, this movie, it really gets me worked up. I think that I've kind of really had a lot of more negative things to say about this movie than positive things. But that's not because I really don't like this movie. It's because, like, I kind of feel really just nothing towards it, positive or negative. Like, I'm just very neutral on this film. And that's, like, the biggest letdown for me is that, like, I would rather have a lot of things that I really hate because I feel like I'm getting more out of a movie like that. But at least, like, while watching it. Like, when I watch a movie that I really strongly dislike, there's something about that that's really fulfilling. But when I'm watching something that I just can't get passionate about, negative or positively, it just kind of falls flat. That's how I feel about this movie. I don't feel that way about the sequel. I'm really eager to see what you would think about the sequel, Ian. But I don't know. Other than that, I don't really have...
See, it's weird. I don't have a ton of desire to see the sequel. I would much rather see Annabelle.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't.
Like that...
Trust me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't imagine it's much better, but it's just, like, something about that appeals to me more than this. And also, just for the record, Annabelle would have been much creepier if she was the fucking Raggedy Ann doll as opposed to the cliche porcelain doll.
No, I agree with you. Absolutely.
And, I worked at Goodwill. We got a lot of porcelain dolls and a lot of Raggedy Ann, Raggedy Andies, and I never thought the Raggedy Anns were creepy. I went through so many phases of, oh my god, porcelain dolls are fucking terrifying. Like, okay, we got these big blue carts that product came in, and they'd be like, 2 foot wide, 4 foot deep, 6 foot long. One day, they'd always come in with sheets covering them, right? One day, one came in, and we took the sheet off, just filled with the pieces of porcelain dolls. Like, the arms, the legs, the heads. The heads didn't have, like, eyes in them. Oh my god, that was the creepiest fucking thing on the planet.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Oh my god, that was terrifying. So porcelain dolls will never be as scary to me because I was around the creepiest part about them, and I didn't get axe murdered or whatever.
So, question for you two, because of how many fucking haunted house possession movies there are, what do you have to do to make a premise like this movie interesting again? Because, like, you talked about with the porcelain doll, and, like, my whole issue with, like, I don't understand the witch thing, and Rasco's sort of, like, complete indifference to this movie because it's just so much nothing. Like, what do you do to make this interesting again? What is it about a haunted house that should be scary in the first place?
I don't know exactly, but so I've seen the movie A Haunting in Connecticut. Have you ever seen that movie?
No, I don't think so. It sounds so familiar, though.
That is a movie that is, like, kind of the same thing. It's about a family moves into a house, but I think what works about that movie is that it really grounds you in, like, the struggles of the individual characters that are unrelated to the haunting before the haunting also becomes a problem. So, like, the main character is, like, the oldest teenage son who's, like, has cancer. Is
that the one where, like, there's a room in the basement or something?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember hearing
that.
And, like, it all starts with, like, the teenage son, he has cancer, and he's going through chemotherapy. And then there's this really in-depth, interesting history to the house that you learn about, and there's a whole kind of, like, weird possession thing with him and this one kid who used to work at the house. And, like, that movie, I think, kind of handles this much better, where like you really don't want to gloss over that history. That's the stuff that's actually really interesting, like the why of the haunting. That stuff's really interesting, but also there has to be conflict out that's not related to specifically being haunted. Like if you have a family where like the parents are struggling like with their marriage and they really aren't happy together and maybe they're considering divorce, and then there's also this haunting stuff, there's inherently going to be more stakes emotionally for like all of the characters involved, and you have to put them first, I think.
You know, it's interesting you ask this question, Steve, because I was just going through it in my head. So this year on Horror Month, for like our main episodes, not counting the fan film reviews Rasco and I are doing, we did Unfriended, we did Christine, we did 1408, and we did The Conjuring. All of those movies, maybe you can make an argument for Christine not being it, but I think it counts, are about haunted things. You know, the Unfriended is about being haunted through the internet by the ghost of someone that you knew. Christine is about like a haunted evil car. 1408 is a haunted hotel room. The Conjuring is a haunted house. I feel like we have an answer to your question with the other three things we talked about.
I think that's fair. Because, I mean, and I think they all do it in various different ways, but they all do it in the way I think Rasco describes. But I think particularly when it comes to objects like a car or a house or even a hotel room, the thing that like scares us most about it inherently, whether it's like a terrifying thing or just a cautious thing, is the history. Where like you walk into a hotel room and it's what happened before you got here. You buy a new house and who lived here before you. You get a car and what happened to this car before I bought it. And I think part of my confusion and like inability to be scared by this movie outside of its own context is like, I don't believe the witch just thought Satan rule. I want to think of her as a human being and as a person that had a worldview that scares me, and she does it in this movie. So like, I don't know what's scary about it. Like, I have an apartment. I am afraid of like, okay, who lived in this place before I did? And I don't see that in this movie. I think a lot of what makes horror work when it comes to haunted objects is the thing that like, we get objects to add something to us, but we're afraid of the things that it adds to us that we can't ever know of. And all of those other movies do that in interesting ways, whether they reflect your own problems or they don't they don't do the thing you wish they could do for you. Except this one. Like, the Amityville Horror versus this is a really good example of like, that couple needed a house. That couple had particular issues and had a particular relationship, and buying a house was a way for them to avoid it, and so the house exists as a way for them to deal with it. And that's not here. Like, there's so much of a disconnect between what these people are doing, who these people are, and what went on in this building, and there's no middle ground. We're like, this would be so much more of an interesting movie if the kid got possessed and tried to murder the parents constantly.
Mm-hmm. I could see that, but at that point you're rewriting it.
No, you are. But like, and that's just my thing. Is like, this is clearly not an outdated idea because we still like things in this style, but this just did it badly or wrong, maybe even.
Let me say one thing that I did like that we hadn't mentioned yet, which is, like, I like it in the context of the movie. I doubt it in the context of reality. I like that the Warrens are displayed as like they're not just, you know, opportunistic hacks that, you know, take any opportunity to discover if something is haunted or not, or to say something is haunted. Like, I like the scene where they're in this random couple's house and they go, "Oh, is this the sound?" And it's like, "Oh yes, see, it's this board being moved by the pipes as water runs through them." And they're all like, "Oh, okay." yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, no, don't worry. 9 times out of 10, it's a rational explanation. But we always like to come out to check. And, like, I don't know, something about that I really like. Like, the idea that you have a couple that actually looks for the rational explanation for a paranormal event first.
Yeah.
Because, like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the Stephen King thing. But I remember one Stephen King movie where, like, this lady is giving a tour through, like, a haunted hotel or building or whatever. And there's, like, this moment where there's just, like, screaming coming from a room and the door slams on its own. And they look at the lady to tell what's going on. She goes, "The local scientists around here say that it's sewer gas escaping and forcing the door closed. So-called rational minds will come up with any explanation so they don't have to change their worldview." And I'm just like, that is such garbage. That is, like, so stupid. No one would ever accept that as a rational explanation for, like, clearly human screaming. Like, but this, I like that it goes like, okay, there's a rational thing first. And so it just makes them more sympathetic. They come off like frickin' Mulder and Scully, but for the particularly, like, fantasy side of horror, I guess.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that about this. It's funny, the way they're shot, like, particularly in the beginning with the story of Annabelle, like, it really did look like they were Mulder and Scully. That's really funny to me.
I'm surprised they didn't go full on to, like, one of them's the skeptic and one of them's the believer thing. Like, that would have been so in line with this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about the exorcism itself. Because, like, they make a big deal out of the fact that this guy is doing his first exorcism solo. And, like, I guess I don't get why we're supposed to have stakes there.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I'm also kind of like, this is not a movie that builds to a climax that requires an exorcism, and then the exorcism happens and it's not the climax of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels like it just wanted to have an exorcism scene.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the exorcism doesn't feel like it's adding anything to it. It's just, okay, now you have to fight it. And, like, well, yeah, it's this weird thing. Like, I remember my friends and I were writing a horror movie, like one of our several that never got made. And we were doing the outline for it, and early on, someone was murdered in a house during a party. And then, like, everyone left the house running away in fear. But the group of friends wanted to Scooby-Doo this shit and do their own investigation, since the cops said that the murderer clearly got away, but they didn't believe it. So they went back to the house. And then, like, my friend Nick was outlining it at this point. He's like, so then they go back in the house, and then they get scared and they run away again. And then they're going to go back to the house a third time. I'm like, no, come the fuck on. That is such a stupid cliche. Why would you ever go back?
Yeah.
Why, like, the first time going back is stupid enough, but that's at least suspension of disbelief. The fact that they are going back a third time is ridiculous. Like, you almost died the one time, and then you go back again? Fuck no. And so, like, I had to argue with them about that for hours, and I have a similar thing to this, like, really, we have to go back to that? Like, I get that she's possessed at this point, but, like, really, he just leaves her alone with the kids? And furthermore, like, what's-her-name comes up with the realization that the mother is like, the mother gets possessed and then kills the family, and she just lets the mother of that family be alone with her kids?
They
Like,
make so many horror movie cliche assumptions about how this haunting is supposed to go that all conveniently turn out to be true.
Well, like, that's the thing, is they conveniently turn out to be true, but they've already made the assumption, and they don't act based on that assumption.
Yeah.
Like, she comes up from the basement, and she says she possesses the mother and has her kill the children. That's why what's-her-name has been having all these bruises, is she's invading her. She's breaking her down and getting into her and possessing her. And she says that it's as if it's already happened. She says this after the scene where she confronts her outside the bathroom, in that she knows she's just been possessed. Why does she let her alone?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff. I don't know. This movie is one of those things where, like, I did not have nearly as many problems with this. When we first recorded and Steve was like, I think this is really bad, I'm like, oh, really? I thought it was a pretty scary movie, and it is a pretty scary movie. It's just not a very good movie, the more you think about it.
Yeah. And, I mean, again, it's fine to, like, sit down and watch with people to get scared, but, like, I don't think this is a scary movie when you watch it a second time. I don't think anything in this movie could scare me if I watched it a second time, because I'd just be too focused on, like, I don't know what's happening. Like I was the first time.
Gotcha. Okay. We want to go ahead and move on to ratings then?
Yeah, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
Rasco, why don't you go first?
I'm going to give this... This is maybe like a smidge too high based on some of the stuff I've said, but I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 hands clapping.
Shit, it's still mine.
Okay. Steve.
I'm going to give this 1.5 out of 5 sympathetic women that might be witches.
Okay.
I'm just obsessed with that. Like, no, she's not just a two-dimensional person. She's a woman, and she may have been a witch. Give me something.
Steve would be like the guy who volunteers to defend to be the lawyer for the women on the Salem witch trial, and like he feels all good about himself while he's doing it, and then like he ends up being executed along with her, and he's just like, shit, bad decision.
I'd totally be down for that. I'm like, dude, if your rationale really is that Satan rules good for you, but I gotta think it's more complicated than that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go slightly higher than you, Steve, because I feel like even though the plot of this movie doesn't make a lot of sense, if you don't think about it, it's not overly bad. And the way it's shot, the way that it actually does do a really good job of scaring you, I gotta give it some credit for, because that is clearly... Scaring you is this movie's top priority. Telling a story is this movie's, like, 5th priority. Setting up a franchise is in between there somewhere. So I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5... Jack-in-the-Box mirror music thingies.
That thing was creepy. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Okay, so we decided to do a special episode for Halloween, so this will not be the last episode of Horror Month. You're getting 2 episodes on Halloween Day, a character analysis of Frankenstein, and a topic discussion that Steve picked way back at the beginning of Horror Month. Steve, what is our topic discussion going to be?
Okay, so it's actually a really good segue given this movie that we just talked about. Do horror movies have to be scary?
Sounds good. Alright, everybody, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Exile.
And I'm the Beta Male Cock.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Ah!